We are live at this hour to Alaska, United States, where President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and also US President Donald Trump are expected to meet today to hold a bilateral meeting along with other members of a delegation from both countries to address the conflict in Ukraine. This is the moment in which the delegation from Russia is arriving at this hour to Alaska to hold this meeting. We are awaiting for the descent of President Putin at this hour. President Donald Trump is already on this territory in which it is expected this meeting to take place, and it is expected as well to focus on seeking a resolution to the Ukraine conflict as well as broader Russia-US bilateral relations as well. This meeting is going to take place in the state of Alaska, which is the edge of which lies just a few dozen miles across the Bering Strait from the Russian border. It is the closest state from between United States and Russia. The meeting is set to begin in a few hours from now, and it is set to take place at the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage. Kremlin Foreign Policy aide Yuri Ushakov announced earlier on Thursday about this meeting that was very much expected throughout this week. A number also of pilots, servicemen, also civilians are expected also to are buried precisely in this military base of the US, and it is a very symbolic place to this meeting to take place. It is also going to be a face-to-face meeting. The summit will open with one-to-one meeting, and also it is going to have a conversation between President Putin and Trump, both accompanied by their interpreters, according to the Kremlin spokesperson. The talks will then continue between the Russian and the US delegation, and the Kremlin and the White House initially confirmed that both leaders are expected to speak at a joint press conference following the negotiations. Also, President Trump later told to Fox News radio that there was no chance that this meeting was going to take another turn and have negative impact, negative consequences. So Moscow's team also will include Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Defense Minister Andrei Belosov, Finance Minister Anton Silvanov, and Special Presidential Representative for Investment and Economic Cooperation with Foreign Countries Kirill Dmitriev, as well as Ushakov himself, the Kremlin spokesperson. At this moment, the presidential airplane from the Russian delegation is arriving at this moment at Alaska, the US state in which this meeting is going to be taking place. It is a meeting very much expected that could have a positive outcome for the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And also Russia noted that there will be also officials as part of the US delegation, but at this moment it is expected, it remains to be seen how many members of the US delegation are going to be taking part in this bilateral meeting. The central issue of this summit, according to Russia Today news media, the topic of this summit is expected to be the Ukraine conflict, also trade and economic issues, and other bilateral cooperation meetings and issues and topics. And also, according to President Putin, that offered statements on Thursday to national news media, he said during a meeting with members of the Russian delegation that Trump's administration was making quite energetic and sincere efforts to end the crisis and create a long-term conditions for peace between our countries to be set. And also the Kremlin indicated that no documents are expected to be signed as a result of this meeting. Also, Trump has described this summit as a feel-out meeting intended to help him better understand Russia's and Vladimir Putin's position, and he also suggested that any potential settlement in Ukraine could involve territorial exchanges, and also this has dismissed Ukrainian reservations about such swaps. It is important to recall that Ukraine is not taking part in this conversation, in this meeting, which is a geopolitical symbolism that takes place also in this meeting between President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and also US President Donald Trump. Neither Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky nor leaders from Western European nations have been invited to these talks. Also, the summit was organized in short order after a visit by Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow last week, and President Trump had also long promised to mediate in this conflict and has increasingly expressed also discontent with the pace of Russian-Ukrainian talks as well. According to US President Donald Trump, he assured in a conference that he hoped the talks would pave the way for a subsequent meeting between Putin and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky. A hypothetical second meeting would be extremely important, he said, as it would likely be central to talks about making a peace deal involving land swaps, according to Trump. Earlier this week, Trump also hinted that any potential solution to the Ukraine conflict would involve territorial exchanges, and also there will be some land swapping according to his very own statements. Moscow previously indicated that also it had received an acceptable offer from Washington through the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff during his talks with President Vladimir Putin last week. And also Witkoff's visit was productive according to Russia and also laid the groundwork for the Alaska summit. This was mentioned precisely by the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov on Thursday ahead of this very important and very key meeting. This was qualified as very important by both leaders involved in this meeting, President Putin, President Trump. And let's recall that it is also taking place in a context in which Donald Trump is having erratic behaviors towards also another key of geopolitical topics. For example, it is also targeting the Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, and it is taking place, this meeting, in a complex geopolitical scenario in that matter as well. According to several news agencies, this meeting between presidents of Russia and President of the United States, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump, is not going to take place in the format 1 by 1, but in the format 3 by 3, in which several ministers are going to take part. And this was informed a few minutes ago by the Speaker of the White House, Caroline Leavitt. Also, during a launch that is going to be taking place in a wider composition, there will be also present the Finance and Commerce Secretaries of the United States, Scott Bessent, and also Howard Lutnick, and also the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and also the Chief of Cabinet of the White House, Susie Wiles. Now we are live. We are seeing live images coming from Alaska. We are seeing now President Vladimir Putin is going down the stairs of the presidential airplane of Russia. He is being awaited by officials of the United States and it is going to be marking the start of the meeting that is going to be taking place today between President Donald Trump and President Putin. Let's recall that President Donald Trump has already arrived a few minutes ago at the airport. They are going to be meeting right now. At this moment, we are seeing President Donald Trump is on his way to meet President Vladimir Putin at this hour. This is going to be a historical greeting that is going to mark the start, the beginning of this process that hopefully could set a way for peace to be achieved in the region, and also in accordance with the interest of the Russian people and its sovereignty as well, for specifically Ukraine stop being a threat for the sovereignty of Russia at this moment. So we are awaiting at this moment for this greeting to take place between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump, who are at this moment said to be shaking hands at this moment in Alaska, the United States. We are seeing at this moment President Donald Trump, President Putin just met. They are shaking hands at this moment. They are sharing a few words. They are going to be also accompanied by interpreters as well that are going to be forming and leading this negotiation, this meeting, this conversation, this dialogue, this bilateral dialogue, in which it is important to recall that Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky is not invited, has not been invited to this conversation that is promising to be important, that is promising to pave the way for a definite conclusion, for a definite solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine at this moment. Both leaders are at this moment at the Anchorage Airport, Alaska 2025. We can see a podium where both leaders are also now taking pictures, and also in a moment that is going to set and it's going to start this moment, the historical moment that is potentially going to have very positive impact in administrations, the full support as well, for example, from the Joe Biden administration, who allocated thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in ammunition, in military weapons as well, for the maintenance of this war, to keep moving and to keep also putting at risk the life of civilians in both sides. So it is part also of the strategy that has been undergone by the US presidency in several occasions as well, and this is also part of this rhetoric imposed by Washington, that now Trump suddenly is changing and is aligning himself with the idea of searching peace, of searching and a solution, and is part now of the great question mark of how the US President Donald Trump is going to really mediate in this conflict. And also now we are going to go deep into the significance of this moment, into the importance of this meeting. We have David Lopez, who is an international analyst and is joining us today to go through the main highlights that we should have in mind following this dialogue. Hello, David. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks to you. Thanks a lot for the invitation in telesur.
Well, first, on your opinion, what's the importance of this meeting? What is at stake today?
So I think this is a very important event because this is the first time in some years that president from Russia and the president from United States will talk with propose to talk about the peace. I think the peace will be the principal and the first point who has to be discussed on the table between Russia and the United States. Maybe with most seriously that the meeting happened here in Geneva in 2021. So I think that both countries, Russia and the United States, have the interest because of the geopolitical situation actually to talk about the peace and to arrive in a conclusion about the resolution of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia as well.
Well, some analysts are calling this summit a very important one. However, it comes to mind that Ukraine is not allowed to participate. How do you see it? What does it mean that Ukraine is not part of this meeting?
You know, the peace is the highest good every day passes. More soldiers and civilians are killed in the Ukrainian war. And it's estimated that more than 1 million people have lost their life in this war, which must be brought to an end as early as possible. Unfortunately, independently of the proposition of the President Erdogan to talk about the peace in Istanbul, about many propositions coming from many international organizations, many countries from Africa, from Latin America, and others, Ukraine and Europe never had the wood to discuss about the peace, only because they would remove mm, President Putin of the international context of the new structure of the international order. And of course, the consequences are right now here. We have not a president of Ukraine who can sit down with the President Putin to discuss about the situation in Ukraine, a situation who I remember it started in 2014 and not in 2022. Um, I think that right now it's normal that countries like European countries and the government in Kiev are not sit down here only because in the past they never would to have the peace. So right now we have to build a new structure to maybe later discuss about a new peace with, of course, taking in account the interest of Russia, who was never taken in account by the Western countries with the all those governments in the United States and the European Union.
And going back to the beginning of this conflict, which was prompted precisely by the presence of NATO allies in the region and nearby the border of Russia, do you think that this meeting could reshape Trump's alignment with NATO countries?
I think that, of course, this. So I hope that this discussion will be um, will have new far of the position they have actually in Europe, much more near to Russia than before. And of course, I hope that the discussions proposed by Donald Trump announced before this meeting will give opportunities to all of the world, to Europe, um, to have a new structure, you know, about the new situation in Europe. Because of course, until today, NATO never gave us opportunities and never gave us guarantees to Russia to talk about the security of Russia. They took only in the interest of some mandatories of the European Union and the oldest government of the United States. We know that the family Biden has some interest in Ukraine, the private interest, and of course, to have in pocket the resolution of this interest, they had to confront Russia, uh, win against Russia, and after that, take all the interest by them, without the interest of the Ukrainian people, without the interest of the Russian people, and of course, with the only one interest, the interest of the capitalist system who maintain again new structure. So the actual structure, who is, I think, called to be put under trust. And of course, this is something I think will be uh, discussed today, and I hope it will have some guarantees to start again a new discussion, maybe in a second meeting with perhaps Ukraine and European countries as well.
In statements to the press, President Donald Trump said he was feeling very optimistic with this meeting. Is your opinion as well? Do you think it is going to set a potential ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine?
I hope that yes. I think that everybody is hoping to have a ceasefire in this conflict I, who has never to begin. You know, I think I was in Ukraine in 2014, and I think that this coup d'état against Yanukovych in this time uh, began the escalation between the Western countries and Russia, and of course never give it the opportunities to discuss about a new peace. If you remember, when the European Union proposed as well to create the agreement Minsk one and Minsk second, Angela Merkel and François Hollande mentioned that these meetings were only proposed to give much more time to Ukraine to give to them much more weapon and confront Russia, you know. So right now, this discussion has to break this on confidentiality of the United States, because of course, as we see right now, for example, in United States attack Iran, but at the same time they negotiate with them. They try to put sanctions against Venezuela, but at the same time they try to negotiate with the openly of Chevron operates in Venezuelan territory. So right now, I hope that Russia will have uh, the confidence in the United States, and of course that the United States will give all the guarantees to discuss about new situation. You know, right now, many people have many expectations to have new structures, to have new discussions, and to have guarantees that the Ukrainian people and Russian people will live with the peace overall and beyond of the interest of the Western countries and the interest of some little groups of economical power in the United States.
What would be, in your opinion, the economically and politically first effects following on, or in the case of a potential end of the conflict in Ukraine?
Sorry, it cut a little bit. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sure. Economically and politically, in your opinion, what would be the first effects of a potential end to the conflict in Ukraine?
Of course, yes. If we find a solution about this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, of course, the economical situation of Europe will change. And I think not only this one of Europe, but the economical situation around the world. We live actually in Europe. We feel how much was the price to pay to the European people to have again a good qualities of life in the European territory. You know, the maybe the actual governments in Europe didn't think the consequences that the European international policies um, affect the European countries and European people. Many people lose the jobs only because Europe put them task and them policies against Russia. And of course, right now you have many sectors of the European work sectors where many people lose the job only because they put sanctions against Russia. Russia take measures, and at the end, the people pay the price. Right now, in Europe, we hope that we will find a new solution, a new issue about this conflict, because, of course, I think the economical situation will change. Many people in Europe will have again new and better condition of life, because of course many people thought that Russia never played a central powerful point on the European economy. But when the unilateral positive
David,
measures began against
David,
Russia.
thank you. Thank you very much for your time here with us in teleSUR English to help us go through this key meeting for not just for Russia and Ukraine, but also for the entire world.
Yeah, I hope that we will find a solution. Of course, we will find a solution with peace and
We will
truth
stay in
and social
touch.
justice.
Thank you, David. Thank
Okay,
you very
thank you.
much.
Bye bye. Bye.
On Friday, the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, met at the Elmendorf Research Base in Anchorage to discuss the settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. Dmitry Peskov, the official representative of the Kremlin, has stated that the event will last approximately 6 to 7 hours. President Trump has expressed his objectives for the meeting, affirming that he will not negotiate on behalf of Ukraine, while Russia has declared that it will submit a clear and certain proposal. On the other hand, the US and Russian authorities in charge of managing the security of the event have recently declared that they have increased the precautionary measures to avoid the risk of espionage at the meeting between the two leaders. The meeting is the first between both nations' leaders since 2019, when they met during the G20 summit held in Osaka, Japan. They had met 4 other times before, the first one in July 2017 at the G20 summit in Germany, just a few months after Donald Trump entered the White House for his first term. They came face to face once more in 2017 at an economic forum in Vietnam, and later in July 2018 during a closed-door talks held in the Helsinki, Finland. Finally, the pair met again during the G20 summit in Argentina in November 2018, and the current summit in Alaska is full of expectation by the international community, which sees the gathering as a potential opportunity to reach a ceasefire in Ukraine. Informations, Bolivia's electoral authorities continue distributing voting materials ahead of the general elections on Sunday. According to the nation's electoral court, the distribution process will continue across the nation until Saturday, and during its first day of distribution on Thursday, 648 of so-called electoral suitcases were sent to several electoral districts of the Department of Chuquisaca, and 172 others will be sent to its rural areas and 995 to the urban regions on Saturday, so as to reach a total of 1,815 in all the departments. On the other hand, over 900 police officers have been deployed to guarantee the custody of the documents delivered and also for the safety of all polling stations across the country. going to interrupt this interview because we are going live now to Alaska, where the press conference between President Donald Trump and also Russian President Vladimir Putin is about to begin. Let's listen.
Уважаемый господин президент, дамы и господа, наши переговоры прошли в конструктивной и взаимоуважительной атмосфере. Были весьма обстоятельными и полезными.
The press conference between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin is beginning at this moment. Both leaders are offering this official conference following almost 3 hours of conversations, and is also taking place after being discussing key topics such as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and a possible solution. It remains to be seen what are the outcomes of this bilateral meeting. That is important to remark that no Ukrainian delegation was invited to, and there are also possibilities, high possibilities of a new meeting that could include a delegation from Ukraine. But at the moment, both leaders, high leaders, are discussing this situation in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but also they are reapproaching and finding ways to keep discussing and prompting and strengthening the bilateral relations between Russia and the United States, a shift in the path that Washington has been following for the past 4 years since the military operation of Russia began in Ukraine, and in a context in which also Washington has been trying to isolate Russia. Seems like this has been impossible because of the capacity of Russia to defend itself, and also because of the success of the Russian armed forces in Ukraine that have emerged as a pivotal factor in the United States' decision precisely to host a summit with Russia, with both leaders at the head facing each other, and also remarking that this also is a critical moment. The meeting is driven by 2 significant aspects. Firstly, the relentless advance of the evidently Russian military in Ukraine that has reached a tipping point. This marks as well a profound breakthrough as Russian forces have secured strategic territories, bringing them close to Kharkov as well and Odessa. Also, the acknowledgement by the NATO leaders as well, including President Donald Trump himself, of the military's inability to contain Russia, that has now necessitated a shift towards diplomatic avenues. This is the result of this. And the second catalyst of this summit is Trump's desire to fulfill his electoral commitment to end the conflict in Ukraine through his campaign. Let's recall that Trump pledged to bring peace to Ukraine, yet tangible results have eluded him. This is largely due to the absence of a concrete settlement plan and increasingly dynamic developments on the battlefield, where the initiative has clearly shifted to Russia. This summit is having a first approach, a first result, a first outcome that is being released now by President Vladimir Putin. Let's listen.
American Special Envoy Mr. Witkoff came to Russia on multiple occasions, and our foreign ministries, heads of foreign ministers were also in communication. So, as you know, one of the key issues for us was resolving the issue of Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine, and we are seeing that President Trump is personally involved, personally interested in resolving this conflict, understanding the in-depth reasons for that conflict. And I have said on multiple occasions that this has to do with Russian national interests and security interests. We've always seen Ukraine as a brotherly nation of Russia's, and we have the same roots. So this, for us, is also a tragedy. So our country, Russia, is certainly interested, very much interested in putting an end to this conflict. We would like to see this settlement of the conflict to be, we want it to be stable and sustainable, and that requires us to address all of the reasons for the conflict and making sure that all of the Russia's interests are taken into account and that the balance of power is respected. I agree with
We were listening to President Vladimir Putin of Russia. He was saying that Russia
President
considers...
Trump, and
Let's listen.
He spoke about this today as well.
Putin has assured that Ukraine and Russia are brotherly nations.
He said that
Let's
Ukraine's
listen.
security must...
Brotherly nations, that's what President Vladimir Putin said. Ukraine and Russia are brotherly nations that have the same roots. And for Russia, this conflict is a true tragedy. And also the president of the country, Vladimir Putin, has said that Russia is very interested in putting an end to the conflict for as long as it do not represent a threat for the sovereignty of the nation. This is the press conference that is taking place in Alaska at this hour, following almost 3 hours of conversations between President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. Now both of them are offering this conference and issuing the main points that they discussed for over 3 hours, and they are going to be drawing key lines regarding the conflict in Ukraine, but also regarding bilateral relations between Russia and the United States as well. This is taking place at the moment in which, several hours after President Donald Trump and President Putin met right on the runway at the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska. The two shook hands in a historical moment and also in a moment of hope. The meeting between the presidents of Russia and the United States is not an end point, but the beginning of a long journey. It will not resolve the turbulence that has gripped humanity, but it matters to everyone. That is why the world has its eyes upon Alaska and has its eyes upon this conference that is said to be remarkable for shifting the way in which this conflict has been evolving, and also hopefully find solutions, lasting solutions for a lasting peace as well in the region. The meeting is also, according to international politics, could have mean an important step towards a lasting agreement for a ceasefire. At this moment, there is no delegation from Ukraine. There are also expectations about a possible second meeting between the two leaders and also a delegation from Ukraine as well. The very first time. Now President Donald Trump is set to take a stance in this conference. Let's listen to his statements. He's due to offer his remarks following the conversation of over 3 hours with President Vladimir Putin and the delegation of ministers. Let's listen.
NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll of course call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time. And we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all, but we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax, but what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Context, to go deep into the relevance of this meeting, of what we just witnessed, we invite Jamir Shabur, political analyst. Hi, Jamir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
What's your opinion on these statements of both leaders that are very thankful for having this space and also trying to keep discussing in further encounters?
I think this is very important, not just for relations between the United States and Russia, but for the world. Due to the climate that we're living in worldwide, given the wars that's happening in the Middle East, the tensions out in Asia, and right now these tensions out in Eastern Europe between the Ukraine and Russia, which is being supported and funded by the United States and NATO. This aggression that the Ukrainian people are doing against the Russians. This right here brings an opportunity of the path for peace and to end this decades-long conflict between the Ukraine and Russia. This, as well as is evading problem like the issues of how this war also has affected the economy of the United States and worldwide, but as well as evading worldwide problems, like evading another possible world war, or also a nuclear problem, like because both Russia and the United States are both superpowers that have access to nuclear weapons. So this right here brings a precedence for peace and stability in the world, but we have to see what are going to be reactions, whether it's in Europe, NATO, or as well as Ukraine with that Prime Minister Zelensky.
Well, it has not been unnoticed that Ukraine is not part of these bilateral discussions. What do you think? Do you think this means in terms of the legitimacy of the government of Volodymyr Zelensky?
I think, yeah, the legitimacy of Vladimir Zelensky as far as being a big time figure in this conflict demonstrates that he is just a face, but not the person financing or the muscle behind this. All of this has the backing of NATO, of the Western European countries, and as well as the United States, as far as trying to expand NATO and have dominance around that region. But as we see, the people we see that Zelensky was just a pawn in the bigger global chess piece of these two forces going at it. It being one side Russia and the other side the United States and NATO. So having these two leaders, President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin, coming together in the state of Alaska, which is the state that's northern east and of the American continent. When I say American, I'm not talking about just the United States. I'm talking about these Americas, which is a next door neighbor to Russia. It actually was a territory that belonged to Russia centuries ago. But I find this interesting of how both leaders have met in Alaska in order to bring about peace and hopefully we could have the presence in the future of the Prime Minister Vladimir Zelensky present in these talks.
This summit is also showing a new stage in the relations between the US and Russia, and also means that it's a shift as well of the policy that has been pursued by Washington in the past few years regarding its stance towards Russia, meaning they have been trying to isolate the country. And how can we read this reapproachment? What can we take from this?
We can take as far as we could make it. We could see. We can make it. We can make it out to be many different things. Whether President Donald Trump sincerely wants to end this war for reasons to keep up with one of his campaign promises he had towards his MAGA base, which was to end the wars and especially the Ukraine war, which is well the intensity of that conflict, which was started under ex-President Barack Obama when they had the Maidan Revolution, the Color Revolution, which the United States promoted, and they overthrew a person who was friendlier to the Russian government back in 2014, and put in a more Western puppet and a Western puppet government to it intensifying under President Joe Biden. All of this has been inherited now by President Donald Trump, and one of his many promises he had towards his base because of how the war affected the U.S. economy when it came to gas prices. But anybody could, and it's anybody's guess that Trump is doing this just to wanting to satisfy his MAGA base. But another end to this as well could be that he probably might want to end that war in Ukraine and then focus more on the potential war with China. So there are many different possibilities of why President Donald Trump is doing this, but I would say things are not black and white. We have to analyze the gray areas and just as see how these process and keep following these process as they unfold.
And on your opinion, how could these talks impact the rest of the world, specifically the global south, taking into account, for example, the US and its display of aggressions against Latin America, for example, against Venezuela in recent days?
Well, I think when we think about the present day aggression that the Trump administration has with Latin America, when we speak about in regards to economic sanctions and blockades, like the way they have it on Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, or tariffs. That's another that has been a new form of economic warfare, as what has occurred right now with Brazil. Um, we also see this other is wanting to accuse certain nation states of being narco states, as last week, where the Trump administration increased the bounty on the legitimate president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and accused him of being a narco trafficker. But when in reality, Venezuela doesn't produce the coca leaf, which is found in countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and also most of the drug products go through the Pacific Sea, the Pacific Ocean of South America. But also, just to come back to your original question, right now there's a lot of tension, possibly military tension with the Trump administration wanting to intervene in countries like Mexico or Venezuela under the pretexts of fighting so-called quote-unquote the cartels. But we could also see that the talks that's happening between Trump and Putin could possibly bring a halt to that, given how President Vladimir Putin has a strong alliance and a strong tie with Venezuela. So I would think, as well as these talks could also affect that posture that the Trump administration and has, the aggression it has towards Latin America, but in particularly towards Venezuela.
Well, looks like, according to the statements of both leaders, there is going to be a second meeting. What are the expectations that we could have if that takes place?
The expectation is just to hopefully see how this process goes, and hopefully this leads towards ending the war in Ukraine, which many lives, whether it has been the Ukrainian or Russian side, have lost lives. It has affected the world, and hopefully this brings about a direction of peace, and also us avoiding nuclear warfare, which wouldn't be good for either side, or for the world, or for our planet as well.
Thank you, Yamir, very much for all of your analysis on this highlight of the day, this meeting between President Putin and Trump.
Thank you for having me.
We are live at this hour to Alaska, United States, where President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and also U.S. President Donald Trump are expected to meet today to hold a bilateral meeting, along with other members of a delegation from both countries, to address the conflict in Ukraine.